Praveen Dabas, and welcome to the MMA India Show. We are discussing the biggest fight in UFC history, UFC 205, New York, Madison Square Garden for the first time. It is big, it is huge, and with me is Akhilesh Ganavalapu, the MMA guru from India. Thanks, Akhilesh, for being with us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
And we have with us Tamanpreet Singh, who used to be our number one fan. It is now with us, and we all three are going to be discussing UFC 205. The anticipation is huge. And first, I want to say the yesterday's press con. You know, in Hindi, I would say, "Panchot बहुत नौटंकी थी, एक दूसरे को कुर्सी जो मार रहे थे." It was like, "मैं मार रहा हूँ, panchot, मैं मारूंगा साले." You know, and he's waiting, literally waiting for almost in slow motion, waiting for Dana White to hold him. I mean, I think like he said, he doesn't want to get into the commission again. You know, go before the commission again, like the whole throwing cans thing, where they just went fucking crazy at it. So this time it was more slow motion.
Right, and you know, it's funny because people think McGregor just does things out of instinct, but he has great respect for the sport. You know, if you see the sport, McGregor did not sport that mink coat before, so there's a reason behind it. You know, 74, so nearly 4 decades ago, you had the Ali Frazier thing going down, where Frazier wore that mink coat. So McGregor was kind of paying a tribute to that rivalry.
Did Frazier win the fight?
No.
He lost it.
74, I think. Yeah, he lost.
So I don't think that's a very good omen for Conor to be wearing that big coat there.
But still, you know, when you have someone like Conor McGregor who, pretends kind of to do things on the fly, I think he's more calculated than what people give him credit for.
Yeah, I definitely think I think it's very calculated. I think he's a showman. I think he's really smart. Even like with the press con with Rafael, he was playing that Mexican drug mafia guy. Came dressed up like him.
You mean Nate Diaz?
No.
The Jose Aldo.
Jose Aldo?
Yeah, there was a Jose. Was it the Jose Aldo? No. It was the Rafael press conference, because he was going to fight Rafael at that time. So that was a Rafael press conference where he came in the big floral shirt and white pants, dressed as the Mexican drug mafia guy, Chaco or Chavo, something like the guy who got caught then.
El Chapo.
Sorry?
El Chapo.
Exactly, El Chapo. That was the Rafael press con.
Yeah, so I think that was the 2FC press con, 200 press con, because the Rafael Conor press con never happened.
No, there was a press conference where they had a stare down. There was a stare down between Conor McGregor and Rafael.
So that is probably the UFC 200. The time is now press conference that happened before the fight night.
Yes. So so like we said, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's a smart guy. He knows how to get the crowd going. He knows what to say to make things viral. He has a really good instinct for that. He has a really good instinct for business. If you look at the Mac Life also, the way they've been branding it, they're coming out with sports training programs now also, the Fast Life. So he knows what he's doing. He's instinctive when he talks, but he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, so he's branded himself, I think, the exact way that he would have wanted, because he has kind of molded himself around Muhammad Ali, who was, the undisputed king of trash talk. But when it came down to fight, he did. So I think Conor is kind of molding himself around that persona of Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
But this time, I think it's going to be very different. So, we'll get down to that when we have to talk about the Conor Eddie Alvarez fight.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting fight. I think you can see a big upset this time around.
I definitely agree. And like you said, let's get to it when we get to it. Let's first start off with Jim Miller and Thiago Pitbull Alves.
Yeah.
So Jim Miller, what's been his stats? This is a lightweight fight. What's been their stats as of now?
I think Jim is about 20 8-7 something.
Yeah.
So I haven't looked up the stats, but Jim Miller is in a very interesting phase of his career because you turn back the clock about 6 months, 7 months ago, and Jim was contemplating retirement.
Yeah.
So he lost the fight. Then he said, you know what, let me go out on my own terms. Then he wanted a fight at UFC 200 against Lozon, I think.
Yeah.
Or was it the fight before?
Yeah,
But
Joe Lozon.
Lozon itself, yeah. So he came back. He was phenomenal. He said, you know what, I can still go. It's also a very interesting clash of styles. You have someone like Jim Miller who can throw down absolutely. If you want to have a stand-up warfare, you don't have to look far beyond the fight between Joe Lozon and Jim Miller.
Yeah.
And he's also
I've been
good.
looking up his fight record on Wikipedia. So his last 4 fights, he's 2-2. He lost against Michael
Right.
Tracy and Diego Sanchez, and he's got wins against Takanori Gomi and Joe Lozon being his last fight.
Right.
Which I think against Joe was a great win because Joe seemed to be a great fighter on the rise.
Right. And his loss against Diego Sanchez. Sanchez is a killer. So there's no shame in losing to someone like Sanchez. But again, he looked phenomenal against Lozon. So that was a fight where I thought, he might have found his charm back. And he's going up against, again, a Brazilian, Alves. Very good ground game, like almost all the Brazilians, very, very solid when it comes to his jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So, it all comes down to, and the other thing is, Jim Miller wanted someone to face someone who did not have a long range. So, Miller is short and stout. He needs to find an opponent who doesn't have the range advantage, get into the pocket, strike with him, and then take him to the ground and finish him. Like what he wanted to do with Joe Lozon. So,
Yeah.
it's a very, very interesting clash of styles.
What's also interesting is Thiago is also in his last 4 2-2.
Right.
With losses against Martin Kampmann and his last fight, which was lost against Carlos Condit, and wins
Right.
against Sate, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Besanicki and Jordan Bain.
Right. So, again, the losses that he had were against very good.
Yeah.
So, this is a point where, either you have someone like Miller who probably, if he wins against Alves, he can say, you know what, I'm done. He can walk out on his own terms as he wanted to do before. Or you can have someone like Thiago Alves who once again, finds his feet back in the UFC. So it's a very interesting fight. Probably going to be a very good stand-up warfare. But when it goes to the ground, that's where you have to see if Miller is, probably, you've seen against Lozon that Lozon actually controlled him when they went to the ground. So it's gonna be interesting to see what Miller has done in the past couple of months.
Yeah. Now, just for the viewers in India who want to see these fights on the, this is the pre-prelim card, or is it still called the prelim card?
This is the prelims card for
which is on UFC Fight Pass. Now,
Yes,
so these 2 fights they can see on Fight Pass. What about the other 4 fights on the prelim card?
So what UFC has done is, for India, for example, they have a broadcasting partner in Sony.
Yes.
So what they do is they telecast every fight which is not on Sony. For example, Sony telecasts your main card. They do not telecast the prelims card, which has the Fight Pass prelims and the Fox Sports prelims.
Yes.
So that is being streamed. You can stream that on UFC Fight Pass, and the main card you can watch on your TV screens.
But the UFC Fight Pass, you can see the 2 fights, or you can also see the other 4 fights.
Yeah, you can also see the other 4 fights.
Because I went to UFC Fight Pass yesterday to check, and it was only showing these 2 fights.
No, so from what I know, because I've had this conversation with UFC Fight Pass people as well.
Yeah.
They said, and I asked them, why don't you show even the main card, because we are paying you, the entire amount.
Yeah.
Because if you go to a different country like the United States, although you still have a partnership between UFC and Fox Sports, they telecast the fights on Fight Pass.
Yeah.
So they said there are selected countries which, where we do not broadcast the main card because we already have a partnership in place.
Yeah.
But the card that is not shown on your TV screens, you can stream it on Fight Pass. So that's how it works.
So what you're saying is these other 4 fights will also be streaming on Fight Pass?
Yes, from what I know, yes.
Okay, so we'll have to recheck on that and let people know. because like I said, when I went to Fight Pass, I only saw these 2 fights, but we'll recheck and let people know. So coming down to a huge fight, which is, on any other day, it would probably head a fight night, which is Khabib versus Michael Johnson, or be a co-main event, or be on the main card of a UFC main fight card. It's a huge fight. It's, of course, this being UFC 205, it's, on the prelims, because they gotta sell their UFC Fight Pass subscriptions as well. So a huge fight. Khabib, of course, being 23-0, and Michael Johnson being, we've got it here somewhere. Where does it go? Michael Johnson being, we did write his record down. Okay, anyway, so his last 2 fights, he won against Dustin Poirier and lost to Nate Diaz. Khabib, of course, saying that he felt used. His father also came out with that, saying because they made him sign 2 contracts and they got Conor and Eddie to negotiate down using those 2 contracts.
Yes. Okay, so I have 2 arguments here. One, you can say Khabib deserves to get a title shot because he's undefeated.
Yeah.
You can also make a case because Khabib has never fought a legit top 5 contender.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sure, he trains with the best wrestlers in AK and stuff like that, And Khabib is a killer when it comes to Russian fighters, because almost all the Russians are really, really good because they have a background in Sambo, they have a background in pankration, which is hand-to-hand combat. They have a background in, judo, for example. So, all the Russian fighters are, very good when it comes down to the ground game and stuff. But you can make a case for Khabib because he has never fought a legit top 5 contender.
Yeah, but having said that, I personally feel Tony's win over Rafael would give him the number 1 contender status, and he has become number 1 in the rankings now.
Yeah, so it all depends because, okay, so now you have a different management team that has come in. It is WME IMG. It's no longer the Fertitas.
Yeah.
So what WME IMG, if you have seen the past couple of months, the main thing that strikes you is they're going after money fights. Yeah. They're not going after stylistic matchups. If you want stylistic matchups, you can say, alright, fine, Tony Ferguson versus Eddie Alvarez. Or, let's get, Rafael Dos Anjos back, or something like that. But, at the end of the day, how big of an attraction would that fight be?
Yeah.
That is what WMA IMG is looking at. Because you have Ronda Rousey coming back, you have the Daniel Cormier and Anthony Rumble Johnson going down next month. So these are your money fights.
I totally agree, but I personally feel Tony has become a big money fight because he's been out there on social media, he's been branding himself, he's been talking himself up, and people want to see him. And the way he fought against Rafael as well, personally, I would want to see him go against the winner of Eddie Conor.
The biggest mistake that I think Tony has done is after his fight. I mean, he won convincingly. He looked amazing against Dos Anjos. You see Dos Anjos gassing out in 4th and 5th round, but you have Tony Ferguson, who's I know for a fact that he was training in the mountains before his fight. I talked to him.
Big Bear County or whatever it was, he was consistently putting things out. Like he said, other people sprint, he sprints up hills. He runs up hills and blah blah blah. He was doing that whole thing, which was great. His training was amazing.
Right. So even when I tried calling him a couple of times, I was unable to get to him. I was then told no. He was training up in the mountains. He cannot have reception over there and stuff like that. So this happened a month before the fight, and so he understood the altitude difference when it comes down to Mexico. So the end point, the end product was, after having such a great fight, he should have called either Eddie Alvarez out or Conor out, the winner of the fight, but he did not do that. You have such a big fight coming that the week after your fight.
Agree, and what he said instead is he wants to be a multi-weight champ.
Yeah, that's I think a very easy way to get out of that predicament. Because
it's also a very Conor-esque statement to make.
Yeah, if you want to have a title fight, you need to call someone out. And look at Tyron Woodley. You get all the champions. They've taken the role of a promoter. They want their own money fights. But you think a guy who is the number 1 contender doesn't want to have a title fight by calling the champion out?
Not just that, but I would say before you say I want to be a multi-belt champ, you need to be a champ of one weight category first before you say that.
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, he missed a very good chance where he could have called the winner of Eddie and McGregor out.
Yeah.
I don't know why he didn't do that. He had his own reasons, I guess, or he was just ecstatic after the win.
पूछना पड़ेगा.
He was tired.
पूछना पड़ेगा उनसे.
Yeah, so and that's a tough thing to know. If we haven't spoken to Tony, we can obviously talk to him and say what he says.
Yeah.
So we can probably get reach a conclusion, get an idea as to what happened.
Well, coming to Michael Johnson now. I just love the fight he had against Nate, because I think Nate was the underdog in that, coming back after some time, and Nate really made him look bad, especially in the later rounds. Nate seemed to be in control. He was doing his Nate Diaz thing, rolling his hands and all of the stuff that he loves, the showmanship was, and he made Michael look bad. Michael went back to the drawing board. He got his fire back. He got his determination back, and he came back strong against Dustin.
Yeah. So his fight against, let's talk about his fight with Dustin Poirier first.
Yeah.
Michael Johnson knew that he had to finish Dustin Poirier in the first couple of rounds after looking at what happened with Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz, okay, his past couple of fights against Conor McGregor might have painted him as the greatest fighter in the world, which he is not.
Yeah.
If you look at his fight. If you look at his fight with Dos Anjos, for example, Anjos made him look like an amateur. He blasted his leg with those leg kicks. He took out the complete game plan of Nate Diaz out of the picture. So his fight with Conor, it was made to look like an epic battle, because Conor was a good 170er, not Nate was a good 170er. So, but yeah, coming down to this fight, it's going to be interesting, because going up against Dustin Poirier, Michael knew that he had to finish Dustin in the first round or second round and not take it to the third round
to make a statement.
He had to make a statement, but at the same time, Dustin Poirier has looked phenomenal since jumping up to 155. He's an excellent striker. He has excellent ground game.
Yeah.
So Michael knew that he couldn't be taken down. That was a very important thing for him going into the fight. But and he's going up with Khabib. So Khabib, exceptional wrestler. He's one of those grinders, like your Cain Velasquez or Daniel Cormier, who once takes you down, grinds you up. It doesn't matter how big of a cardio you have, how big of a conditioning you have.
And what's surprising is nobody calls him out.
Yeah, nobody calls him out because he hasn't fought a legit top 5 fighter until now.
I agree, but he is. 23-0. You got to respect that record, and you got to respect the fact that he's, like you said, a grinder. People fear, I think, his ground game, just like Damian Maia, of course. Even though they have two different ground games, but it's like once you get into the tangles of that, ground game, it's almost like it's game over.
So this will be an interesting fight. This will show me if the hype of Khabib is true or if it's just made up.
I totally agree. I think it's going to be Khabib's ground game against Michael Johnson's defense.
Defense as well as Johnson's striking.
Striking, of course. That's what I mean. Johnson has to keep it on his feet, and impose his striking game, whereas Khabib is going to try to take it to the ground. What do you have to say about Khabib's standing game, about his striking?
Good. I won't say it's one of the best at 155, because it's definitely not. Much like Daniel Cormier, even Cormier's striking is very underrated. AKA, for example, although it is known for its wrestling, there are some really good striking coaches in AKA. So, although they're not really known for their one-punch knockout power or anything like that, but Khabib has a really good striking game, but at the same time, it's nowhere close. He doesn't pack as much power as Michael Johnson does.
Yeah. Now, if we are to make a prediction, let's say, who would you go with?
Again, as I said, this would be a test of Khabib for me to really show me if he can hang with the top fivers.
Yeah.
I would still think Khabib would win by unanimous decision, just by grinding Johnson out.
Okay. Pawan, you have something to say?
Yeah, I think Khabib would win this fight just because he's grinding him. When he fought against RDA, we remember his slam. He carried RDA altogether to the different edge of the cage and he slammed in hard. So I think his ground and pound is much greater than what we have seen in Michael.
So why are we saying that he hasn't fought a top 5 guy if he's beaten Rafael?
So Rafael, he was having a very torrid time when he was still with Evolve MMA. I think that was back in 2011.
Yeah.
And he lost a series of fights.
So
he then changed.
You can say that Rafael at that time wasn't the Rafael of today. So that's why we're not talking.
So I think they fought in 2014, but still at that point, I don't think RDA was the same kind of monster that is now.
Yeah. Okay. So having said that, I would also kind of favor Khabib. I think he's going to grind it out. I feel he's going to finish it before the final round. That's my kind of feeling. Having said that, before we get to the next fight, which is Frankie Edgar, Jeremy Stephens, I just have to point out something to everybody. तीनों दाढ़ी वाले हैं. तीनों दाढ़ी वाले बैठे हैं अभी. One is respect the beard. I say fear the beard. What do you have to say?
Take notice of the beard.
Alright, let's take notice of the beard. दाढ़ी से डरो, दाढ़ी को respect करो, और दाढ़ी को notice करो. Find it.
Yeah,
no shave November.
Yeah, no shave November. So I think we're all contributing to the great cause.
लेकिन हैदराबाद में गर्मी नहीं लगती दाढ़ी के साथ?
लगती है. I mean, it's not optimum, but still,
Okay.
Yeah, if it's a good cause, it's a good cause.
Okay, great. So it's a good cause. And moving on to Frankie Edgar versus Jeremy Stephens, which is going to be one hell of a fight. Frankie, of course, coming off of a loss to Jose Aldo and a win over Chad Mendes, which was an amazing. It was one of those things where I guess Chad just got caught. But of course, that's the fight. You can't say what if only Frankie was the better guy that day and the faster guy. He got that cross in faster than Chad did. And of course, but the Jose Aldo fight, he just wasn't able to get his game plan in.
So, I think after the fight with Conor McGregor, everyone just underestimated Jose Aldo. There's a reason why he was undefeated for nearly a decade, for over a decade. Frankie, one of the best strikers. I mean, the way he completely mauled BJ Penn in their last fight.
Yeah.
He's just a beast. But he lost both of his fights to Jose Aldo. So I think people kind of underestimated Jose a bit after getting knocked out in 13 seconds. But again, Jose, he just. I think if you want to, look at the past 10 years and come up with a list with the pound for pound top 5 fighters, Jose will be at least number 2 or number 3 on that list.
I have to say this, and I think I've said it before on one of the shows that according to me, Jose lost to Conor in the mental game. And partly because Conor's mental game works much better against the Brazilians because the Brazilians are not that proficient in English. They are not able to answer back the way they would, normally. And I think it kind of gets stuck inside and they feel frustrated. They don't know, and it keeps getting in. And in their mind, they're thinking, "Is bench ko main cage mein dikhunga, iski main maa ban karunga cage mein." And that's where Jose Aldo was over anxious to get in and show him that I am Jose Aldo, I am the champion, I'm going to fucking shut you up.
The thing with Brazilians is, even if you look at the fight between Anderson Silva and Chael Sonnen, the thing with Brazilians is, it's not about, okay, one part of it is not being able to communicate properly in English, but the second thing is
Anderson is a little different, I feel, because he's been living in America for some time now.
You mean Anderson Silva?
Yeah.
No, so this was back in 2010.
Okay.
Silva and Chael Sonnen.
Yeah.
So the thing with Brazilians is they give a lot of importance to respect. It's a place where you say it's more like your Japanese tradition when it comes to your Aikido or the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu or those styles where you give respect. You have a proper fight, and then you give respect again after the fight. And the major difference was, you look at Jose Aldo, who he faced before Conor McGregor, the likes of Shaq, the likes of Frankie Edgar were respectful.
Yeah.
But Conor was the first guy who came in and said, you know what, he used abuses. He abused Jose Aldo in his hometown. He took the title from Jose Aldo. He used to hit Jose Aldo on the head when they had TV interviews and stuff like that. He disrespected Jose, and that was what I think broke Jose down mentally.
Yeah.
And
he
said,
just got totally into his head. The pushing of the shoulders, the snatching of the belt, the running out of the cage and screaming in his face. Jose Aldo had never seen anything like that.
Right, so again, if you look at the parallels between Conor McGregor, what he did and what Muhammad Ali used to do before his fights, very similar. You have that Kinshasa, you have that Bombay, that chant where Ali, he supported the fans. He urged the fans to chant that, and that broke his opponents down. So I think Conor is following suit in that respect. He has the mental game down to the dot.
Yeah.
It's such a very fascinating thing to get into a fighter's head, where most of the things to worry about how the game plan would be executed, but it's refreshing. And you had Chael Sonnen, again going back to Chael Sonnen, you had one guy who was trash talk, but who did not live up to the hype inside the cage.
That's because he couldn't back up the trash talk with his game. Conor McGregor is a much, much better fighter.
And that's where I say Conor is very cerebral. You may think Conor is just saying stuff because he's brash, he's an idiot, or whatever it is.
I think he knows the effect it's going to have on his opponent.
Yes, definitely. So that's where Jose Aldo was broken. And Jose, after that, when he fought Frankie Edgar, he just showed, what, I'm not done. And the way in which he dismantled Frankie, the way in which he neutralized Frankie, it was phenomenal. You have someone like Mark Henry, who is Frankie's striking coach. So the way Mark Henry operates with his fighters is almost identical, and it's almost precise, pinpoint precise.
Yeah.
But when he fought Jose, it was ineffective. So Jose is that one such fighter who's, I think, kind of being shrugged under the rug after his defeat to Conor.
Yeah.
But again, one of the top fighters in the history of the sport.
Yeah, totally agreed. And I would actually look forward to, Conor having to defend his belt against Jose, if that actually materializes, which it has to, I guess, sooner or later.
I don't know if it would. I honestly don't know, because, for Conor, making 145 was always a tough deal.
But he has
it's not.
Ariel Helwani just interviewed his coach, John Kavanagh. And he did ask him about this, and he did say yes, he will still make 145. He's never missed weight. A lot of people have asked this question whether he will be able to make it or not, but he has never missed weight, and he will go between both belts because he has no intention of giving up either belt right now.
Yes, but the thing is, the body doesn't always accept what your mind says. You look at, for example, you have your Cyborg, who said, what, I'll make 135 or I'll make 140. For her, making 140 is a tough freaking deal.
But we got to give him the benefit of the doubt, since he's never failed at it up till now.
That's correct. But, again, you have to think, because fighting at 170 and then at 155, would Conor be willing to go back to 145? Who will he fight at 145? I think there is only one legit fight for Conor at 145, and that is Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, but he has said that he's not going to give that fight to Frankie Edgar because Frankie Edgar lost against Jose, who he beat in 13 seconds, so Frankie isn't good enough.
Right, I'm pretty sure he's saying that just to get inside Frankie's head, but at the same time, you still have Jose Aldo who's the interim champion.
Yeah.
So when Conor goes back to 145, it makes all the sense in the world for him to fight Jose first.
Exactly.
Which I don't think he would be very interested in, because he milked whatever he could from the first. After getting knocked out for 13 seconds, in 13 seconds, what is Jose going to do? How are they going to market the fight? If you're looking at it from a marketing standpoint, how would a promotion market a fight in which a fighter got knocked out in 13 seconds?
The guy who got knocked out in 13 seconds makes a comeback. They've got to do something. But I agree with you. But having said that, I think we're losing track here a little. The fight is actually between Frankie Edgar and Jeremy Stephens. So I think let's
Right.
get back to the actual fight. Frankie, of course, after his loss to Jose, is looking to make a statement against Jeremy Stephens again, who looked good against Renan but lost to Max Holloway.
Right. So Stephens welcomed Barao to the 145-pound division. Looked phenomenal against Barao.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, Barao lost to TJ Dillashaw. His morale was broken. So I thought, what, probably Barao is gonna, look much better moving up a weight class. But Jeremy Stephens completely outclassed Barao.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with a guy who has legit one-punch knockout power.
So
when you're looking at 145.
Do you think he beat Barao back into the other weight division?
No, Barao is 45.
Yeah. So he's going to stay at 145.
So yeah, he's going to stick at 140. Stick to 145.
Okay.
Because now it doesn't make sense for him to go back to 135 because you have Dominic Cruz, you have TJ Dillashaw, you have this guy who's going to fight
Cody Garbrandt.
Cody Garbrandt. Yeah. You have a lot of legit contenders at 135. You have Asunsa, you have a lot of legit contenders at 135.
Yeah.
Now has to go back to the end of the line, which he shouldn't because he was a phenomenal champion at 135.
Yeah.
So again, going back to Stephens, he has that legit punch knockout power at 145. Who else has that? Conor McGregor, yes. But who else apart from Conor and Jeremy? No one. As far as your top 5 are concerned. So probably Shad Mendes, but again he's suspended for 2 years. So this is a fight which can actually propel Jeremy if he manages to catch Frankie. Frankie at this point, it's more about him getting over that mental aspect where he has lost a couple of fights previously. He's looking to bounce back, and a win over Stephens would propel to probably another title contenders fight against Jose Aldo. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But both good strikers, both are very intelligent on their feet. Frankie Edgar, very underrated ground game once again.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how this goes down, but I think there'll be a stand-up warfare between the two.
Yeah, I agree. So my money, who do you think, your money is on? I have a feeling Jeremy is coming into this fight really, really confident. He looked pretty confident at the press con.
Yeah, but if you have Frankie Edgar in fight, I don't think it's wise to count out at any time. So I'm going to go with Frankie Edgar. Just because he has lost a fight to Jose, he wants to bounce back, and he even talked about contemplating retirement. So I'm pretty sure Frankie would be looking to make a fight, and that's exactly what he's going to do.
Okay. You have something to say?
Yeah, my money would be on Frankie Edgar. He's my favorite fighter since I've started watching UFC, and he has good ground game, being an NCAA Division 1 champion. So I think, and Jeremy has started training smarter now, and he said that he's not sparring that much, and he's just training in strength and conditioning, which he was lacking before. So he has started training smartly, but still I'll have my money on Frankie Edgar.
But let me also put forward when we're talking about one for Max Holloway.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that.
I know he's fighting next month, but no one is talking about Max Holloway, which is a shame because he's. If you compare the dangerous fighters on 25, I think Max Holloway is a mistake.
Yeah, amazing fighter. His last loss being to
Conor, yes.
Right. So that's what I mean. Look at how many fights Max has had, and look how young he is. I think 23, 24.
23, 24.
Yeah.
And he's ran through a lot of top names. Yeah, he's ran through a lot of top names in the division.
Yeah, look at his last fight against Ricardo Bully Lamas. And when he pointed to the ground and said, "Let's bang."
Yeah. Right. So I mean, it's almost sad that Max Holloway is being looked over because he's a very, very dangerous fighter. So I think probably the winner of Frankie and Jeremy, I'm pretty sure they're going to fight Holloway next, and the winner would face the champion for the title.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, well, coming to the main card. Coming to the main card, we have, of course, the first fight being Miesha Tate, ex-champ, versus Rachel Pennington, Rocky Pennington. Do you think this is a come down for Miesha? You know, she just lost her title against to Amanda Nunes, and Rachel, of course, she was a semi-finalist in the Ultimate Fighter, the one that she fought in, and I thought she looked really good. Her stand-up skills were really good in that show, and she's got some good wins against her name. She has just beaten Beth Correa and Elizabeth Phillips, and you know, of course, Miesha having winning the title from Holly Holm, but losing immediately to Amanda Nunes. Do you think Miesha deserved somebody, or do you think this was the natural matchup to make? You know, the upcoming fighter against Miesha, who has to make a statement again.
So I think I exactly thought this is what UFC is going to do. You know, when you lose to your opponent in the first round, like Miesha has done at UFC 200, it's always smart to build her back. And there's a reason for this. You have Ronda Rousey coming back. Now, you know, if Ronda beats Nunes in the first round, who do you have? Who do you have who are legit contenders, who are legit title contenders for Ronda, even Nunes for the title? You have Holly Holm, who has lost 2 fights. You have Shevchenko, you have Pena, who's probably the number 1 contender.
I was just going to say, wouldn't it make more sense Miesha Tate against Pena?
No. So, and this is the reason why. I know Pena, Australia at U183, and I asked her at that point, do you want to fight Miesha? She said no. The only time I'm going to fight Miesha is when she has the belt, because they are both best friends.
Because they're both, yes,
no, fight between
Miesha was her coach, of course.
Right, so they're both best friends,
yes.
And Pena said, you know what, the only time when I'm going to fight Miesha is if she is a champion, and I actually need to fight for the title. So that's not going to happen. You had to give Miesha another opponent. You look at the top 7, Alexis Davis, you have Sarah McMahon, you have, again, those are very tough fights for Miesha. You know, although Ronda beat the you have Olympic medalist in Sarah McMahon, a really, really good fighter in Alexis Davis. So who are going to give Miesha next? So you have to build up.
Yeah.
So I think Pennington is absolutely the correct matchup for her. But again, at the same time, Miesha is going to pound her Pennington. No disrespect to Pennington, and she's a veteran in the fight game. But the only thing is, if you look at the bantamweight division, it's the most well-rounded fighter, hands down.
Yeah.
Excellent ground game, very, very, very good stand-up. She has come a long way in stand-up as well. She has very, very good ability to take a fight to her opponent to the ground, finish them with submissions, go for ground and pound if needed. So I think it's a smart decision on the UFC's part to start building her up again and giving her Hal Pennington first.
So again, it's going to be a stand-up versus a ground game. Pennington's stand-up game versus Miesha's ground game, and Miesha's stand-up game is pretty good. It's not like she's a slouch when she's standing. You know, her stand-up game is pretty good, and she uses it to advantage to get people on the ground.
Right, so I don't think it's a striker versus a wrestler point here, because as you said, Miesha is a really, really good striker, and when she gets her opponent into the screen, gets those short jabs and closes the range. She is a really dangerous fighter, and that's why she was a champion. So I think, although we say that, but I think Miesha is going to win hands down. I'm pretty sure she's going to submit in the second round. I don't see it going into the third round or going to the judges.
Well, my take on that is also the same. I think it's going to be Miesha's game. She got far too much experience, and I think it's going to be a good learning experience for Pennington.
Yeah, and Pennington has fought some of the 135. She fought Holly Holm in a very close fight, which she lost by split decision, if I remember correctly. So it's not like Pennington is below Misha's level or anything like that, but just the amount of work Misha has put in. And I managed to talk to Brian Caraway, who's Misha's boyfriend, and I asked him about Misha Tate and what happened at UFC 200. Although he didn't say much, he said it's my fault. He just said, what happened at UFC 200 was my fault. I take responsibility for it, and he said it's personal. So I have no idea what happened. But if what he said is true, then you can see a more hungrier Misha Tate coming there.
So are you saying it was a wrong strategy devised by Brian Caraway?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
It was a wrong strategy devised by Brian Caraway for Misha against Amanda.
I think so, because Nunes is an aggressive fighter, especially the first round, and that is why she's even a very bad matchup for Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
If you look at Ronda Rousey's boxing technique and what Edmund taught with
Yeah.
if you look at the entire division, Nunes is the most dangerous opponent for Ronda.
Yeah.
So Misha, I don't think her game plan was proper. I don't think they tried taking the fight to the second and third round, which is where Amanda's gassing out. But Misha has been in a lot of 5-round fights, so they did not have that game plan proper down to the dot. So that's what I think. That's what I think he meant. But again, I have no idea because he said it's personal. So
okay, fair enough. Though in a strategy, I don't know what personal means, but I guess that's his way of keeping it to himself. Plus, I guess they don't want to let out, what strategy they had at that time and what they're going to come up with now, which is fair enough. So I guess, are you also with Misha?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Misha is going to win, yes, hands down. But I think it's gonna be a unanimous decision. I think Rocky would give her a tough fight, because I remember when Rocky fight Holly Holm. Holly won by unanimous decision, but Rocky gave her a very tough time. So I think Misha will win, but
was it unanimous or what?
I think it was.
Was it unanimous?
I think it was unanimous. I am not sure. I think it was unanimous. Maybe 1 round to
But having said that, Holly and Rachel would be stylistically a little more similar, whereas here there is a difference in styles.
Yeah, that's correct. But I think still she's gonna give tough competition to Misha, because there's nothing to lose for Rocky here, and I think this
Misha has a lot more.
It's kind of a tune-up fight for Misha to get up.
Like you said, it's a way for them to pick her up again.
Yeah.
Yes, but I don't think it's that bad of a matchup for Rafael either, because you have seen what Nunes did to me standing up. And again, Rafael is a very good boxer.
Yeah. I'm not saying that at all. I think
usually
Pennington is a really good fighter, and I think it's going to be a tough fight. So I don't think it's just a matchup that they've given Misha to build her up again. I think it's actually a tough fight, but yeah, money's on Misha.
Yep.
So having said that, we are going to take a small little break and come back to you in a second. Cheers. Bye. Hi, this is Praveen Dabas with the MMA India Show, and we're back with Taman and Akhilesh, and we are now going to talk about Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Kelvin Gastelum. Gastelum, of course, being the Ultimate Fighter season. Which season did you win?
I think it was 16 with
16.
Sonnen coached.
Winner.
Yeah.
And Donald, of course, having moved up to welterweight in the last couple of fights since he lost to Rafael, the title fight, and he's been on a roll, of course, at welterweight with wins against Patrick Cote and Rick Story. And Kelvin, of course, his last 2 fights, he lost to Neil Magny, and then he defeated Johnny Hendricks, which is, man, I feel bad for Johnny. I was a big fan of his, but he's got to get his shit together. But anyway, he's not on this card, so back to Donald against Kelvin. Donald Cerrone, of course, being, he's the kind of guy you would want to see anytime, and he's always ready to fight, and of course he's on the main card here. The kind of guy you always like seeing fighting. He's got a solid game, all-round game against Kelvin Gastelum, who has a very good ground game and a developing stand-up game.
Yes, so just talking about that Hendricks fight, you have those who always have difficulty in making weight. Hendricks was with Mike Dolce at that point, then he dropped Dolce. There was this one point where the UFC was helping Kelvin in getting his weight together. So they were his opponents were about, UFC is paying for you, UFC is taking care of your nutrition, what about us?
Yeah.
So Kelvin, again, very talented, excellent wrestler. I think he has purple belt in BJJ under Eddie Bravo.
Yes.
So again, on the ground, he's phenomenal. Similar to Johnny Hendricks. Johnny Hendricks, again, NCAA wrestler, outstanding on the ground. But and he's going up against someone like Donald Cerrone, who has problems in starting in the first round.
Yeah.
That's why you saw what happened with RDA the way it did. That's why you saw what happened with Eddie Alvarez the way it did against Cerrone. But going up against someone like Gastelum, who doesn't have that kind of a striking advantage, it's gonna be, I think, pretty easy, or I shouldn't say easy, but I think it's advantageous for Cerrone. That's why you see him opening overwhelming odds-on favorite to win the fight. So I think it's going to get wrapped up in probably the second round.
I agree. I think it's going to be a strong game for Donald. I think they have tried to build up Kelvin, and they've been supportive of him as a UFC winner, and of course as somebody that they probably just like, because I think that plays, as we've seen, a part sometimes where they get along with people and they just tend to give them more fights and support them, which is fair enough. Fair enough. And of course, Kelvin has had some notable losses against the likes of Tyron Woodley. Where even the fact that he got a chance to fight Tyron Woodley is great for him.
But didn't he lose to Neil Magny? I think he lost the fight with Neil Magny.
Yeah, he did. He lost to Neil Magny.
Yeah, it was a split decision, lost to Neil Magny.
Yeah, but talking about that fight itself, you have seen what Lawrence Larkin did at UFC 202. We talked to Neil Magny before, where he completely decimated Neil Magny. He completely took out his.
You mean we've spoken to Lawrence before? We had Lawrence, the Monsoon.
Yes.
Lawrence Larkin.
Yes. Yeah. So complete Magny, he punctured his leg, took him out in the second round.
Yeah.
And Kelvin, again, with all due respect, lost to Neil Magny. Again, I'm not taking anything from Neil Magny. Magny completely Lombard when they fought in Australia. So again, coming down to UFC giving preference to Kelvin, I don't see anything phenomenal about him. I mean, he's not a marketing phenomenon like Conor McGregor is, or Ronda Rousey is, for example. I don't think he's even as marketable in the welterweight division as Stephen Thompson is, to be very honest, or even Robbie Lawler, because they have a distinct advantage. When it comes to Robbie Lawler, which just stands and bangs with his opponents. Stephen Thompson, again, a phenom when it comes to striking.
Shall we just say that Kelvin seems to have 9 lives as far as the UFC is concerned?
Yeah, I mean, he has missed weight so many times. So I mean, let's see, at the end of the day, said, we're going to take care of your nutrition and diet. Just freaking make weight and fight. So, but yeah. So coming on this fight again, as I said, Cerrone will have a distinct advantage when it comes to striking. I don't see Kelvin doing much in the first round, which again plays to his favor because he's a slow starter. I just see Cerrone striking with Kelvin, and Cerrone's ground game is very underrated, as you have seen what happened to Oliveira before, where he submitted Oliveira. So Cerrone is a really, really good striker with a really, really good game. But again, I see it ending in the second round via strikes.
Yeah, maybe they are trying to build Kelvin Gastelum for the Mexican market. They say that they like to bite the guard and just fight. So maybe that's why UFC likes him more to build into the Mexican market more. They don't have much of Mexican
Right, but as
people here.
but as I said, he's not that marketable. I mean, maybe it's just me. I don't see him being that marketable. If you want, you still have your Cain Velasquez, who is a big name when it comes down to Mexico. So I don't see anything special about Kelvin, but again, maybe UFC thinks differently.
Yeah, hope so.
So, okay, having said that, I personally feel it's gonna. You're saying it's gonna end via strikes. I personally feel it might even end on the ground.
On the second round.
Yeah, I personally feel it might end on the ground also because, like you mentioned, Donald has a vicious ground game.
Yeah, I won't call it vicious. I'll say
You know what I mean? I mean,
vicious
it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Maybe not vicious, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, so it's underrated.
It's underrated
because a lot of his opponents just want to take him to the ground because he's a really good striker.
Yeah.
But I think they underestimate how good he is on the ground as well.
Yeah. Well, having said that, let's move on to one fight which would have made, of course, the main card. Or it's amazing how overshadowed this fight is, which is between ex-champ Chris Weidman, who has been instrumental in getting UFC to New York, versus Yoel Romero. And Yoel's last fight, of course, against Jacare Souza, which Yoel was tested positive. Do you think he still deserves to have that win against his name, or does he not? Am I wrong? Does he still have that win against his name, or no?
No, it has been overturned to a no contest.
Fair enough. But do you think he deserves, after coming off of a suspension like that, to straight get an ex-champ in Chris Weidman and it being almost like a number one contender fight?
It's not a number one contender fight. I think. I think UFC had only two options. You have four guys in Rockhold, Jacare Souza.
But you don't think it's become a number one contender fight now with Rockhold versus Jacare off?
Right, it's off. But now what UFC can do is they can give Jacare the winner of Yoel and make that title eliminator, and the winner fights Rockhold. Sorry, Bisping. Because again, Yoel Romero, one of the strongest fighters in the division, undoubtedly. I mean, probably you can compare him to Hector Lombard when it comes to sheer power and strength in the division.
He even looks like him, but he has a tendency to gas out. Right. He has a tendency to gas out in the later rounds.
Yes, so that is the most important thing that we need to take notice of in the fight, because see, if it's a 5-round fight, I would definitely say it's up to Weidman. I would definitely give Weidman the edge over Romero, because as you've seen what happened with Romero and Jacare, Romero started gassing out in the second, and deep into the third round he was out. He was completely gassed out. And again, Romero is an Olympic level wrestler. Wrestlers do tend to have good cardio.
Yeah.
But this is the case with Woodley as well as Romero, where they put so much power behind the shots, they start gassing out quicker. So this is where they need to be economical, but at the same time, this is where I give the edge to Chris Weidman, but not as much as it would have been if this was a 5-round fight. So I think Romero would like to stand and trade with Weidman, knowing that if they go to the ground, Weidman still has good tank, still has good cardio, while Romero is really good on the ground, has nasty ground and pound, but at the same time he gasses out quickly. So Weidman can take those shots. You have seen it happen with Rockhold as well. He was pummeled in the third, but still made it to the fourth round. Romero cannot afford that with Weidman. If he takes him to the ground, he has to finish him, or Weidman is going to come back in the third round and might win via submission or something like that. So that's probably what Romero might be thinking.
And let's not forget, this is Chris Weidman's first fight since losing the title.
Yes, so he was supposed to fight earlier, got an injury, then had to be taken off the card, then he's making his return now.
Yes.
And there was even a point where, he did not know if he was on the 205 card to begin with.
Yeah.
So this was about 1.5 months ago, 2 months ago, where I was talking to his team and they said, we have a very big announcement coming soon, but until that happens, we cannot tell you. So at that point, it was revealed that he was in talks about being on the new card. It was still not confirmed, but at the end of the day, just 2 days before the press conference, the 2 press conference, finally agreed on the bout. So it's going to be interesting. And again, if you see Whiteman, he's being very low key at this point. Not doing those interviews that he did after beating Anderson Silva, twice, beating Lyoto Machida, beating Vitor Belfort. Those big names. He was beating all the Brazilians. Then he was given rock hold, and he completely got dismantled. So I will still think to Whiteman. I would still think he would just do enough to pick up the victory. I would say it will be a decision. If Ferrero loses his gas tank in the third round, and Weidman makes a comeback.
I also agree. I don't see this fight being stopped in the middle. I do seeing it go to the judges, and I do see Weidman winning, if not for anything else, but probably a personal decision of wanting him to win.
Right, and so I kind of am a little iffy when it comes to judges. If you've seen what happened last weekend. So there is this one guy called Sal Diamato, who's probably the most hated judge in the sport of MMA. Because if you have one judge, who gives a 30-27 score to one fighter, he gives 27-29 to the other side.
Yeah.
So so when it comes to judges, I am a little hesitant. I'm always a little iffy.
Yeah.
But again, I don't remember watching Weidman in the second round or the third round. I see Weidman weathering the storm, coming back and picking up a position victory.
Great. I'll pick Yoel Romero in this.
Okay.
Because I see that in his last fight also, if Weidman stops him or if Weidman weathers the storm in first or second round, then I think it would be a split decision. Could go to anybody. But I think Yoel Romero would come aggressively, and he would try to finish him in first round or second round. So I'll rather pick Yoel Romero in this. And not to forget, he's quite old now. He's 38, and he's I think he's silver medalist or silver medalist in Olympics in wrestling. So he has that wrestling mindset that what Weidman would try to take him down. So we know that he has a good takedown defense, and I see that.
Yes.
So I see that Yoel would stop the fight in the first or second round. He'll come that way, and if Weidman weathers the storm and holds his chin, then it could go to a split decision to anybody.
Okay, so the reason why I picked Weidman again is because, alright, you have Romero is an Olympic medalist, but you have an NCAA wrestler in Weidman. One of the best wrestlers when it comes down to competition. So, if it's a wrestler versus wrestler, you purely have to go with Weidman because Weidman, only because of Weidman. You have seen what happened with Jacare Souza, and Jacare, again, being a BJJ guy, he, was really good, and still Romero, could not take those that amount of time. It was a 3-round fight, and he started gassing out in the second round. So if that happens against Weidman, who's a really, really good wrestler, who would just take an opponent to the ground and grind him out. I'm pretty sure Romero would not be. The whole thing is that amount of muscle, that amount of power behind his shots, that amount of wrestling. I don't think his gas tank will be able to hold it up. If it does, I will absolutely go with Romero. Only because of the power advantage, but we know for a fact that it won't.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I'm picking Weidman in this.
Great. Now, having said that, we are going to take a small little break again and come back to you with the 3 title fights on the main card. It's getting more exciting. We're going to talk about Joanna, Tyrone, Wonder Boy, Eddie, Connor, and the beautiful Carolina. Coming back to you soon. Hi, you're back with the MMA India Show. This is Praveen, Taman, and Akhilesh. Akhilesh, I have a really quick question. I just saw something on the net, and apparently the guy who helped, where did it go? Who helped Trump win was an analyst called Avinash Igavarapu. Now that sounds very similar to Akhilesh Ganavarapu. So he's not your relative or something, is he?
No, I mean, I'm sorry, I could not hear 80% of the sentence. But
I heard the name. Let me repeat that for your benefit. The guy who helped Trump win with all the data and analytics is called Avinash Igavarapu. So that sounds very similar to Akhilesh Ganavarapu. So I'm saying, is he like a relative of yours or anything?
Maybe my Russian twin, but
He's not Russian, he's Indian. He's just an Indian in America.
maybe definitely not me.
Okay.
I would I Trump or Hillary, to be very honest. But yeah, that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we'll keep politics out of it. Though a lot of UFC fighters have very openly discussed politics, and a couple of them are sniping at each other. Yesterday, I saw a comment made by Nick Lentz, and to which Will Brooks replied. And
Right.
I think you might have said that anyway. Anyway, let's keep politics out of it. Let's move to the top 3 fights, the title fights. Joanna, I can never pronounce her last name. Can you help me there?
Jurjanchik.
Yes, Joanna, you
Thank you. And Carolina, I can never pronounce these Polish names again. The last name, Kowalczyk.
It's Kowalkiewicz.
Kowalkiewicz. Okay, let's just call them Joanna and Carolina.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah, it's JT.
Joanna. She's got such a personality. And Tyrone Woodley rightly called her gangster. She's like got this really, tough guy attitude.
And that is not something that she, kind of poses in front of people because, again, when I talk about fighters like this, because I've seen them in person, you just have to see Joanna walking with that championship title. And again, in Australia, she fought at UFC 193, which I covered in person. And when she walked into the room, and mind you, there was Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm at that point in the room as well. But when she walks into the room, she walks with a swagger that she owns.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just a make-believe thing that some people put on, but she is really like that. She is confident, and she knows that she owns it.
I think there was a bit of some headbutting at the 5 stare downs as well.
Okay.
Right. So for this fight, you can see 2 different contrasts. Although this is almost similar, you have one person in Carolina who's very soft-spoken, who's very shy, who doesn't come out and say stuff that is very negative. But Joanna who's very outspoken.
Yeah.
Even during a fight with Claudia Guerrera, you've seen Joanna how brash she was. She was abusing Claudia. She came off almost as the villain of the entire season. Yeah. So 2 completely different people. You have Joanna headbutting Carolina, but eventually nothing happens, so that's good. But if and this is something that you need to be careful with the athletic commissions.
Yeah.
Joanna had Carolina open.
Yeah.
New York's state athletic commission would have fined her.
Joanna is very, very in your face all the time.
Sorry, Joanna.
Joanna is always in your face. She's always like in your face.
Yes. Yes. So she always says, "I respect my opponents, except for Claudia." Anyone else that she has fought, she always, congratulates them after the fight, except for Claudia. So, she's brash, but at the same time, I think she does it, and similar to McGregor, she's not fake, but she tunes it up. She just tunes who she is as a person more, and that's the product that we see.
And she's got 2 really good wins. Her last 2 wins against Valerie and Claudia. I think she was pretty dominant in both. The Claudia fight was, a little more competitive than the Valerie fight.
Yes. So again, watching it in person, I thought Valerie did a very good job. I did not give Valerie much of a chance. But, going into the fight, Valerie, she used to fight at 125, 135. So she has a bigger frame.
Yeah.
And she had a brutal weight cut.
Yeah.
And, Claudia, something similar. She gassed. I thought Claudia controlled the first rounds, but then she started gassing out. And it was all Joanna in the third and fourth and fifth. From middle of third and complete fourth and fifth. But Carolina, provides a very different challenge. You have Claudia, excellent wrestler, very good stand-up, but again she gassed. You have Ali with the same condition, she cut like 25, 30 pounds to make 115, gasses out. Carolina doesn't. You see a fight Rose Namajunas.
Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, she neutralized Rose's grounding. So that was a very effective game plan. If she does something similar with Joanna, you never know what can happen.
I think she fought much better than I thought she would against Rose, because Rose came off that big win against
Van Zandt.
Against Van Zandt, where she totally destroyed her.
Yeah. Right. So I think there were two things to this. One, Carolina had a very good game plan where she was effectively neutralized the Rose game. She had very down defense. She started working the clinches. She connected with a lot of nasty knees in the clinches with Rose. But again, saying that Rose did not have very in a corner for a fight with Carolina. I don't think she had proper game plan. She kind of underestimated Carolina's striking and Carolina's takedown defense. She went for various takedowns, a lot of takedowns, but Carolina managed to stuff almost all of them. So it was not a proper game plan on part of Rose Namajunas, but a very good game plan on part of Carolina. But you will not see that happening with Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Joanna, she knows what she has to do in order to get a victory. She has that championship mentality.
Do you think Joanna shifting fight camps just before this fight is going to play any factor?
So yeah, I could not.
Do you think Joanna changing fight camps? She's moved to America and joined American top team. Do you think it's going to play a factor somehow in your game plan and strategy?
Not necessarily. ATT is known for its legit skiing. You have Robin ATT. You have someone like Will Brooks, who is, I think, the most well-rounded fighter in his division in the UFC. So various top fighters from ATT. So I think, if anything, she's gonna get better. I think Joanna is gonna get better.
Fair enough. So coming down to the prediction of it, I would say it's Joanna would have to have a really bad off day, and Carolina would have to have an amazing game plan coming in to get this win off of Joanna.
I think Joanna to win either by a technical knockout in the third round or by unanimous decision by goes to the judges. But I think eventually it's going to be Joanna again. Carolina has never fought someone like Joanna at a stage like UFC 205.
Yeah.
Pressure would be a natural thing, but Joanna has already fought at UFC 193 in front of 55,000 fans. Carolina hasn't. So I think that's a legit thing to consider.
Yeah,
that's correct. I think Joanna would win this fight, but it would not be that easy. But on the other hand, we don't know that how Carolina would perform if it goes to championship rounds. We know that Joanna is very good in round 4 and round 5. We saw that against Claudia. She was losing round 1 and then round 2, and she has very good takedown defense too. So I see this Joanna winning this fight in 3 or 4 in third or fourth round. I don't know if Carolina would perform well in championship rounds if it goes to fourth or fifth round.
Right, but again, consider the fact that Claudia started gassing out badly from the third round.
Right.
You won't see that happening with Carolina.
She's
matched on 15. She matched on 15. Again, both have similar backgrounds when it comes to striking, the striking game. Both are really good Muay Thai strikers. That's where I think Joanna will have an added advantage because of her training at ATT. If anything, she's going to incorporate more in wrestling, which makes her a very dangerous fighter.
Yeah, and I think Joanna has already had a win against Carolina in some Muay Thai championship. So
Yeah.
it may play some part on Carolina's mind.
I think that's also only Carolina's only loss, but I think that was a long time back.
Yes.
You know, when,
In KSW days.
Okay.
so
Yeah.
okay, so I guess we all three are on the same page. Now,
Yep.
moving to the fight, Tyrone Woodley versus Wonderboy, one of the most interesting stylistic matchups on this card. There's so much to say. Tyrone, of course, coming off that amazing knockout of Robbie Lawler. No one gave him a chance in that fight, and surprisingly, he's the underdog, being the champion. He is the underdog against Wonderboy. You know, and I think that might play to his advantage because he always comes in as the underdog. There's less pressure than him, even though he's the champion. It's like he's got less pressure defending the belt than Wonderboy has to win it. Did you hear what I said?
Sorry, was it too?
Okay.
And there was a lot of.
Okay. Let me repeat that. I said Woodley seems to have more pressure. Well, seems to have less pressure defending the belt than Wonderboy does have winning it.
I don't think Wonderboy is gonna feel a lot of pressure, to be honest, because Woodley. Okay, so if you talk about Tyrone, what the interesting thing with him is. The reason why no one gave him a chance against Robbie Lawler was because Tyrone is very inconsistent. While you have Robbie Lawler who has that legit punch knock, connect that and the opponent goes down. But when it comes to Stephen Thompson, his last two fights, if you merge those two fighters, you get Tyrone. The wrestling of Johnny Hendricks, the striking of Rory McDonald.
Yeah.
And you put them together and you have someone like Tyrone Woodley who has that one punch, one right that can knock anyone out. At the same time, exceptional wrestler. He takes anyone to the ground. He can grind them. Get some more, compound them. So you were on the media conference call with Thompson and
Correct.
Last week.
Yeah.
Right. So I even asked Thompson about it. I asked him. You have to use a merge of your previous two opponents. But the fact that Thompson, overpowered those two guys, Rory again, a perennial title contender, legit welterweight, and Johnny Hendricks, a former champion, and Thompson finished one guy with ease, and he controlled the second guy with ease. And you merge two of them and Tyrone Woodley, and the biggest thing with Woodley is he puts a lot of strength, and the reason why even again won against Robbie Lawler, so the previous editions, what happened with Woodley was he used to throw a lot of shots, a lot of carb behind him, and tire himself out. So when he tires himself out, when his gas tank gets empty, there's no added advantage of his wrestling.
Yeah.
But he was very economical against Robbie Lawler. He I think went to forgot the gym. Which gym did Punk train out of again? Why do I keep forgetting?
Fighter?
Which
the name
fighter?
of the gym, my coach.
Which fighter?
Duke Rufus. Duke
Rufus.
Right.
Yes.
Punk. So Duke Rufus. So Tyrone used Duke Rufus for the last fight, where they were very economical, where Duke Rufus actually trained him to be more precise.
Yeah.
So I think that is going to be an added advantage going forward for Woodley. He will not tire himself he did previously. And at the same time, he incorporated some different styles in his striking arsenal along with his wrestling. But, as you said, one of the most interesting stylistic fight because you have a wrestler against a striker. The old adage of wrestler versus striker fight going on.
Yeah, though it's strange to look at Tyrone Woodley as a wrestler because he's such a brilliant striker and he's been knocking people out. Now, having said that, do you think he's going to be a little, what's the word, predictable in a sense coming to this fight because he has used the same kind of combinations knocking people out where, the one, he leads with the right, feints with the left and then comes with that overhand right, knowing that the person is trying to block that straight and almost they're like deers with lights in their eyes almost, knowing that this is going to come. Do you think Wonder Boy will be much better at controlling the distance and knowing that this is kind of, the main weapon that he uses and keeping it with his kicks? He's always able to keep the guys guessing because they never know where he's going to hit from as well, and he's able to maintain that distance a little better.
Right. So there are different aspects to this stylistic game. For example, firstly you look at stance. Stance of a boxer is different from the stance of a Muay Thai fighter and a karate fighter.
Yeah.
So if you're more side on and you have a wrestler coming in, it's easier for someone who is side on to escape those takedown attempts, those one leg takedown attempts, because it's easier to escape to slip out of those single legs.
Yeah.
I think that's the same case with Wonder Boy, who has a more side stance, and the other thing is he switches stances. Wonder Boy is not someone who's either a southpaw or who's out. And as you saw with Rory McDonald, he managed to switch stances during his fights.
Yeah.
He's going to do the same thing with Tyron Woodley. If Tyron wants to come in with overhand right, there is always a chance for Wonder Boy to circle away from his right. You switch his stance, confuse, and as you said, use his distance and range control to keep Tyron away and keep him from going for takedowns. But saying that, Tyron again is not that one who has a overhand right to his arsenal, because he has come a long way in his striking in past fights. Still, he is primarily a wrestler who has evolved as a striker. Those feints that you saw with Robbie Lawler might not be, his entire game plan is going to obviously change his game plan for someone like Stephen Thompson. So I don't see an advantage for Stephen, but at the same time, his style might suit him for this fight.
Okay, I personally am going to give it to Wonder Boy. I think he's an amazing all-round fighter, and I think he's a little hard to practice against. We've seen, of course, Tyrone train with Sage Northcutt in preparation for Wonder Boy, and I think putting that into the public space was also a mental game to tell Wonder Boy that, listen, we are preparing specifically for you, and we know how, what your game plan is and how you fight, and we've got a game plan ready for you, and we're going to overcome that no matter what.
The other thing is, Sage Northcutt trained at TriStar for a while, the same gym that Wonder Boy used to train at. So even that can be an advantage for Tyron Woodley, because TriStar primarily implies the same kind of style. If you see what happened with Rory McDonald or GSP, how they use their left to set up the takedowns, it's kind of the same. So maybe Sage can give that kind of information to Stephen Thompson is a completely different fighter. He's an anomaly when it comes down to the division. So I still think Stephen is going to do the same thing. He's just going to keep his distance, use his oblique kicks to keep Tyron away. He's going to stuff his takedown attempts like he did with Johnny Hendricks. When it comes down to that overhand right that Woodley needs to set up, the important thing is to set it up. He's not going to catch Wonder Boy out of nowhere with that overhand right. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Having that range control, having that distance control, I think Stephen Thompson is at an added advantage. And he's also very unorthodox. He doesn't stick to one stance. He keeps switching stances. His more side stance might, come to his advantage in this fight. So I am again leaning towards Stephen Thompson just because it's top two of my favorite fighters. Johnny Hendricks and Rory McDonald.
Yeah, I also think the same on the same lines, because Wonder Boy is more of a side stance, right? And then he changes this, and it is very difficult to replicate what Wonder Boy do. And we do not. He might bring Sage into the camp, but the reach Wonder Boy has, he cannot replicate that. Right? If he would have brought in MVP or Raymond Daniels, who has the similar point karate styles, that would have been a different kid. But the reach, what Wonder Boy has on a side stance, it's very difficult. And I also think that I also see this fight, Wonder Boy winning this fight.
One thing we've not mentioned is one of the few losses Tyrone has recently is against Rory McDonald.
Right. And what about winning?
Of course, that's making it too simplistic. I'm not trying to sound simplistic. कि उसने उसको हराया तो ये तो उसको हराएगा. I'm not trying to say that, but I'm just trying to say that Rory was able to control that fight distance, keep him away with kicks, in a similar game plan that we may see from Thompson against him.
I don't think same plan again. That was TriStar's game. That's how they do it. That's how GSP and Rory operate. But Thompson is completely different. He's a different fighter. He's a different. But if the only thing is, if Woodley manages to close the distance, if he manages to get in the clinches, if he manages to take Stephen Thompson down, we have never really seen Stephen Thompson's ground game being tested. If Woodley manages to do that, that's going to be a completely different game. It's going to be
Cool. So coming to the main event, the 155 champ Eddie Alvarez versus Conor McGregor, the 145 champ. Conor, of course, trying to be the first man to hold two belts simultaneously, trying to make history at the Madison Square Garden at UFC 205. It's a big task that he's trying to, but it is within his grasp. To say that it's not within his grasp, I think, he has said a lot. People have always thought he's not going to be able to achieve a lot of things. Of course, he was stopped by Nate Diaz. The second fight, a lot of people have different views. I had my own view, which I talked about. Don't need to repeat them now, though I think Nate Diaz won, but I don't want to repeat it right now. But having said that, it is going to be such an amazing fight. There's so much hype around this because he becomes a two-belt champion, which has never been done before. He is, of course, aiming to become a legend if he has not already joined the annals of becoming one, talked himself into it. Of course, Eddie Alvarez thinks differently. Eddie Alvarez feels he has been given hand-picked people to match his style. And he feels he has the game plan to destroy Conor to a large extent, of course. I agree with that. At the peril of Conor McGregor proving all of us, or me, wrong, of course. But Eddie Alvarez is a tough SOB.
right. So Eddie's saying Conor was given easier fights is not correct at all, because
I didn't say it. Eddie Alvarez said it. I didn't say it. Eddie Alvarez said it.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I said. I mean, Eddie saying that is a mistake because, still, even if he fought Sham and then 10 days notice, still fought one of the best wrestlers in the division. I can probably understand that with Dennis Siver and Dustin Poirier.
Yeah.
I cannot, understand that actually Jose Aldo, for example, who has been the kingpin for the past decade when it comes down to 145, although it was recently introduced in the UFC. The only thing is, there's a stark difference between Eddie Alvarez and anyone else that Conor has fought before.
Yes.
The main thing is, and again, now I'm bringing back Nate Diaz comparison here. Conor made Nate Diaz look like a world beater, like an absolute monster, which Nate Diaz is not.
Yeah.
You rank up as the top 155ers. I'm pretty sure he's not gonna challenge or beat someone for the title. He's not gonna beat Eddie Alvarez for the title. Eddie Alvarez beaten. The Pettis, even in Bellator, the Mike Chandlers, who is again an amazing fighter. So,
trilogy.
So Eddie has been on Eddie has been on a roll, and he rightly calls himself the king underground because he has fought so many battles, so many legendary battles.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Conor's his motto is to beat his opponent very big for a fight.
Yeah.
So he follows the same mentality that Muhammad Ali used to do, where he used to say the first battle is won outside the cage or outside the ring before the fight. What remains is 10% of the job to finish. I think Conor does follow a same route as that, but he could not do that with Nate in the first fight.
Yeah.
He could not do that with Eddie Alvarez.
Yes.
And that's what I even asked Eddie, during the conference call. I asked him, do you think even during the fight week or during the weigh-ins, do you think Conor is going to try to get into your head? And Eddie said, that is not going to happen with me because I've fought so many other people.
Yeah.
And he said, Conor is not even the opponent that I've fought. Which is true. Conor is not the best opponent that Eddie has fought. It's all hype. Although I understand the hype, although I'm a big fan of McGregor, I do not see McGregor winning this. I see Eddie Alvarez beating McGregor.
Now, like you mentioned, like Ali, he used to bring, his opponent's wife. I'm not sure if he brought his kids into the picture, but he definitely used to bring his opponent's wives into the picture and say stuff the same way. Now that you mentioned it, it really comes up that Conor has followed the same path. He's mentioned Rafael's wife and kids. He has mentioned Eddie's wife and kids, which Eddie has taken personally now. Now, having said that, Eddie in the fight in the pre-fight conference last night asked for an apology. Do you think that shows that comment he did take it personally, and that shows that he did get inside Eddie's head in a way?
No. So the thing is, Eddie actually fought back. Yeah. So during the press conference, he brought up Conor McGregor's girlfriend being pregnant.
Yeah. I thought that was a great comment to get back at Conor. Yeah. That was great.
So that was one, and the other thing is, Eddie did not need to throw a chair at Conor, but he did, and Conor got pissed off.
Yeah.
Now that used to be the other way around. Conor used to do the antics to piss the other fighter off. So Woodley was taking a video while Eddie was standing and laughing while Conor was being held back.
Yeah.
So you see, so the mental warfare, I don't think it's going to be of any significant, it's going to play any significant role in the fight. Yeah. I think Eddie has utilized whatever advantage Conor had, and if you purely bring this fight down stylistically to break this fight, Eddie is again the most durable fighter at 155. Eddie has been stopped only once by strikes. Yes. I said that to Conor. I said, he's probably the most durable fighter. Do you think you can finish him? He said, yeah, first round, blah, blah. I know the same.
But that's his usual blase. He said that against Nate Diaz. That's his usual blase. I don't think that's an honest answer. Who finished? Just for my knowledge, who finished Eddie Alvarez?
Yes. I think it was Chandler by strikes.
In one of their collision
fights. The first fight. The second fight.
Now, having said that, what do you think is one of Eddie's strongest points apart from his ground game? Do you think it's his ability to come in and out as well? He never fully really engages in the dogfight unless he sees his opponent hurt. He's very good at coming in and out and controlling the distance. What do you think would be his strong point against McGregor?
So just talking about McGregor. What McGregor does is he sets his opponents up. So if you have seen with Jose Aldo, for example, Jose threw the first punch, but Conor controlled the distance. He moved from his range, the point of contact, and he countered with his left. So I think he's going to do something similar. He's just going to keep his distance. He won't be charging in like his other opponents. But at the same time, Eddie is a very durable fighter. So even if it's even if Conor connects with a couple of combinations, I don't think Eddie's gonna be jaded. I think he's gonna keep his distance, probably work in the clinches. What Nate Diaz failed to do with Conor McGregor was take him down in the second fight in those clinches.
Right.
Clinches was where Conor McGregor probably had one Nate Diaz. If you see the fight and if you sit back and objectively watch the fight, the fight was won in those clinches. And that was where Conor McGregor even took Nate Diaz down.
Yeah.
So, getting those BJJ coaches and working with them has helped Conor.
Yeah.
At the same time, he's he's not, those guys who can stuff takedowns very well. He did that with Nate Diaz. We need to see what happens with Eddie Alvarez. What Eddie Alvarez really excels at is taking his first 1 or 2 rounds and then coming back strongly in those 3rd or 4th rounds. You have seen what Eddie did with RDA, for example. He went a storm for like 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, then completely bamboozled RDA with his strikes. So keeping that range control, keeping his distance, then countering. So what Conor is usually good at is countering his opponent's strikes. So if Eddie can maintain distance,
Yeah.
and Eddie, control the range, and Eddie's not he's not he doesn't have a long reach. He's not a tall fighter in those clinches. If he gets those stock fights, as you said, close the gap, connect with those short jabs, take corner to the that is
That's
Yeah, there's almost been so much said about this fight now. It's been going on. It's like you're almost like, okay, fuck it, enough of the talk. Just get in the cage and fight now. We're almost like sick and tired of all the talk. And hearing it, and then on the press conference, and everybody saying this and that. It's like, okay, fuck it, just get inside the cage and fight. And I think they are really ready to do that as well. I think like you rightly said, he has not been able to get into Eddie's fight. It's not like Eddie is so like wound up that he's going to go in rushing against Conor. That's not going to happen. Eddie has a game plan. He's a smart fighter as well. Like you said, he's a really durable fighter. He has a game plan. He's going to fight his fight as well. He knows how Conor fights. He knows how he fights. He's going to go in there. Of course, and we're going to see an amazing fight. Is he the overwhelming favorite? I don't think so. Conor, of course, is going to have a game plan for Eddie as well. We saw that he came up with a new game plan for Nate, which seemed to work in the first couple of rounds against Nate. He is going to come in with a game plan against Eddie. Is he going to be overconfident again, like he was in the first fight against Nate? We don't know. It remains to be seen when the cage door shuts. But we do know it's going to be one hell of a fight. We do know Eddie is one of the toughest opponents he has ever fought. And like you said, he made Nate look like some world-class champion. He's an awesome fighter. But is he good enough to beat the top guys here? Rafael made him look really bad. So is he good enough to go up
the other
against...
thing is...
Yeah.
The other thing is, I'm pretty sure you're going to see McGregor doing a lot of tactical defense. I'm pretty sure Conor would realize in the second round that he cannot finish Eddie that easily.
Yeah.
He would try to create separation. He would try to circle Eddie Alvarez like he did with Nate Diaz. So I'm pretty sure he's going to do a lot of things that he did with Nate Diaz, but it won't work against Eddie Alvarez.
I actually think we're going to see a little bit of the opposite. Like you saw against Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor Part 2, you saw Nate Diaz chasing McGregor and him walking around and resetting every time. I personally feel it's going to be the opposite here. You're going to have Conor McGregor trying to reach Eddie and him, frustrating Conor, resetting and trying to control the distance and being a smarter fighter.
I don't think that's going to happen because that's not Eddie's nature. Eddie's nature is try to create that separation. He never, so Conor had to do what he had to do against Nate Diaz.
Yeah.
Let's be very honest.
Yeah.
There was no, way that he could get the victory if he did put it in the first fight.
Yeah.
To create that separation, he had to reset. He had to come back again. He had to get in the ranges and stay away. As in terms of your fight, so he had to do that with Nate Diaz, but I'm sure that's pretty much what Conor's going to do with Eddie Alvarez after the second round when he realizes that he cannot put Eddie Alvarez away.
Yeah.
And Eddie he comes for a dog fight. He gets into those clinches, he gets into those areas where he has the advantage with those short jabs, with those combinations by closing the distance. And once he connects with good flush combinations, I'm pretty sure Eddie's going to take Conor to the ground and see what those two BJJ coaches have taught Conor McGregor so far.
Conor's defense game has improved quite a lot, but having said that, Eddie's ground game is amazing. It's a level that I don't think he's seen up till now, and we're seeing it Eddie Alvarez fully fit as far as we know and with a full camp.
Right. So the difference is Conor has fought at 170. He was at 168. He was at walking weight for Nate Diaz. In that case, Conor was gassing out. He was still stuck Nate Diaz's takedowns.
Yeah.
But he was still gassing.
Yeah.
And he has fought at 145 in the UFC. Now it's going to be interesting to see what game plan he employs at 155, because 155 is a different world. It's different from 145 and 170. Conor cannot put on the same weight like he did against Nate Diaz and come out and fight Eddie Alvarez. He cannot go back to what he used to do at 155. So it will be interesting to see how he performs at 155. It's going to be a very, very critical issue, because the cardio and conditioning is very different in all the weight divisions.
Yeah, so I guess we're both on the same page as far as Eddie winning, I hope. And you have anything to say?
Yeah, I just have one thing in mind. Like, we know that Eddie had absolute wars. I can say world wars with Michael Chandler, with all the other people, with Gilbert Melendez. And he had many fights like these dog fights. But I am not sure how many hard shots can you take it to the head. On the other hand, we haven't seen these kind of wars with Conor McGregor. In most of the fights, we saw Conor McGregor dominating the other person. So I'm not sure if Conor hits his left hand with precision, is Eddie going to fall down? Because in first fight, he hurt Nate, but he cannot finish Nate. But in the second fight, Nate did get down with the shots, with the Conor shots. We saw that in second round and as well as in fourth round. So I'm not sure if Conor hits with precision, Eddie is going to be that durable or not.
Now, before we answer this, there's a question from some fans, one of which is from Pratik Singh, and he asked this question: does Eddie have a good chin, and can Conor be knocked out? What we have seen, I'm guessing, is Eddie has a very good chin.
155, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he has been in wars. I mean, you talk about it's against Donald Cerrone, you talk about his fight with Pettis, you talk about his fight even in Bellator, again, as I said, with Chandler.
Yeah.
Absolute wars. He got connected flush on the chin, and these guys hit very hard.
Yes.
Donald Cerrone, for a fact, hits hard. So, he has been very, very tough fights. He managed to hang on. As I said, he was only finished once in his entire career by strikes.
Yeah.
So that is again the definition of durability. When it comes to firearm fights, Eddie has been in firearm fights. How many firearm fights has Conor been in? As in, how many times has he won?
Yeah.
Once.
That's true.
I think the only time he's really been in fights is against Nate Diaz, and one of them Nate Diaz won, and the second one was a majority decision and a contentious one at that.
Again, saying that Nate Diaz, with all due respect to him, he's not, the top fighter at 150 or 170. Conor really looked like the top fighter at 150 or 170. So, he's gonna face a completely different challenge with Eddie Alvarez.
Yeah.
But he was not at match with Nate at 170. We can contest that because those fights were on 170. And we don't know how altogether it would be a different ball game in 155.
Well, my thing with that is this whole 170 thing has been hyped by these guys to make Conor look good. It just happened to be at 170 because Nate Diaz was told 10 days before the fight that he was given the fight chance. Actually, Nate Diaz fights at 155. Right? So he's not really at 170. He's got some fights at 170, yeah.
Yeah, just in perspective, Conor said he's going to take the belts of all the divisions. I would be interested to see him take on Tyron Woodley, murder him.
Yeah.
No two ways about it. Woodley's going to murder him. So, it's again, fighting a natural 170 is ideas at 170 is different.
Is too different.
Fighting a natural 155er is different. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how Conor McGregor does at 155. But again, with Alvarez.
I wonder
because I don't see how Conor can stop Eddie.
I wonder if he was also talking about Joanna's belt because he said he's going to take all the belts. I mean, if I was there, I would have asked that question.
Yeah,
is the next fight going to be against Joanna then? Because you want to take all the belts. Might as well fight the women then as well.
Yeah, it will come down to a Ronda can beat a Floyd Mayweather topic again.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people get it's really funny because Dana White said, "Oh no, Ronda can drop Floyd Mayweather." Sure, she can.
Yeah, yeah. I think both Dana White and Conor McGregor say a lot of things. So let's just keep it at that. Now, for the last thing, I think we've all said what we've needed to and wanted to on all the fights. Most of the the fan questions have been answered. Another fan said one thing. One second, let me just see if I can find that here. He did have he did have something to say about Dana nodding to whatever Conor has to say nowadays. You know, coming late or anything. You know, that's just how the way it is. Do you think they're cozying up a bit too much and just agreeing to whatever Conor has to say because he's such a big draw?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there is no doubt about that. If UFC has to go anywhere in the world, let's say if they have to go to a new country in Europe, who is the biggest draw? Undoubtedly the biggest draw. It's not gonna be Alexander Gustafsson who's from Europe. It's not gonna be anyone else. It's gonna be Conor McGregor. I mean, yeah, he's from Europe anyways, but go to Africa, go to Brazil, go to any place in South America, go to Asia, anywhere in the world, it's gonna be the biggest draw. It's not gonna be Ronda Rousey, if you ask me. It's gonna be Conor McGregor. That is the aura Conor McGregor has created for himself.
Yeah.
So yes, if UFC had drawn, and UFC has been constantly making those $1 million in gate revenues and in attendance records and in pay-per-view buy. You look at the hits of Conor McGregor, all of them have crossed $1 million pay-per-view buys. And 205 is going to do even more. 205 I'm pretty unheard of when it comes to MMA.
Yeah, so that question
if that means that means that they have to step to Conor for like 15 minutes, sure.
Yeah. I guess they're like, fuck it, he's making a lot of money for us, you know. So that question was from Vaman Shinoy. Having said that, I think we're more or less reached the end of the show. Conor, of course, has also said he's got a very big announcement to make. I think his announcement will also depend on whether he wins or not. That's why he's keeping it for after the fight.
Yeah, he has released a new brand of, I think, apparel or something like that.
Do you think that's the announcement? Is that the announcement?
Maybe. I don't think so, but because how can you get more eyeballs to have something up?
I think the announcement is going to be something different than just launching a new clothing brand. But having said that, I also think it's going to depend. It's also going to depend on whether he wins or not.
You never know. Maybe he's gonna say, "Okay, look, I'm gonna take 5-6 months away. My girlfriend is expecting, so I need to be a father."
Yeah.
That can happen. He can say, "You know what? Fuck this. I want to put on shorts and PA, for example." Might be. There are like different permutations and combinations that can come into picture. So you never know.
Yep. Well, having said that, I'm all talked out. I don't know about you guys, but I'm all talked out, and I want to see the fight now. I'm just dying to see UFC 205, starting with the prelims, which we will see on UFC Fight Pass. We still have to find out where the in-between prelims are going to be shown, whether they're going to be on Fight Pass or not. We will tell you, fans, very soon. We will find out and let you guys know. They should be on Fight Pass, but if not, we will let you guys know where you can see them. Thank you, Akhilesh, for joining us again, and we shall talk to you again soon. And thank you, Taman, and thank you to me. We've had a long chat. Thank you, fans, for tuning in. We are getting a lot more views, so thank you guys. Our last post had 43,000 plus views and counting. Thank you guys for making the MMA India Show what it is today. We will keep talking to you. We will keep engaging. We will keep answering your questions, and that's what makes us what it is. Thank you from us, all of us at the MMA India Show, and we look forward to the UFC 20 fight card. Goodbye for now.